Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus arcade video. This is actually going to be a first part of a multi-part video on Gauntlet Legends where I'm actually doing a full playthrough. This game was released in 1998, October 1998 on the Atari Vegas hardware, and yeah, it was a remake of the classic Gauntlet series. Definitely a really good game in my opinion, but yeah, let's take a look here at the intro. Very classic intro. And take a look.
In an ancient time, a greedy young mage, using the power of the rune stones, released a great evil upon the world. This demon, Scorn, fearing the power of the rune stones, cast them to the far reaches of the four mystical realms in hope that they will never again be assembled and used against him. No one has dared try. Until now.
And now the strange part there is, it seems like this game, I don't know if it's just my copy of the game or it's just the game in general, but it just seems to favor showing the wizard in the movie, as there are, what do you call it, there's a version for each of the, default colors for the heroes, you know, the yellow wizard, blue Valkyrie, red, warrior, and green archer. But it seems like it hardly ever picks the green archer.
Select a character.
And now, as you can see here, I actually had started this game quite a while ago.
Select a journey.
And I had previously tried to do this. You'll notice it has said traveled there instead of saying like nothing at all. But I'd previously tried to do this, but the problem is, as opposed to Gauntlet Dark Legacy, which I had done in an earlier video, this version of the game actually has 3 runestones per realm because there are less realms. So I think I only had found, yeah, I can see it on the screen right now. I'd only found 2 of the runestones. I didn't find 3, so I didn't complete this. And I don't know if I'd made mention of it in my other video, but the time that I actually had played it when I was young, when I was on that like cruise to Bermuda, the bunch of kids and me, we had actually beat this, but the problem is, since it was the first time I had played this game, which, as I said, I think it was 2000 or 2001, somewhere around that time, like a couple years after the game came out, but I didn't realize that the rune stones were something that was necessary, so I never actually saw the true ending until actually playing what you're seeing right now. So suffice to say, when I recorded this footage, this was the first ever time I had beaten the arcade version of Gauntlet Legends and actually saw the true ending, which was really cool to see for a change. But, yeah, that's one thing that you definitely have to remember if you're playing Legends as opposed to Legacy. And now right there, if you saw that, I'm guessing somehow I shot magic, because I don't believe I actually used magic there. I've looked at the footage several times, but, it's, like, if you shoot magic, it will explode, but apparently, I've not seen really a difference, but the announcer guy will say, shooting magic lessens the effect or something to that extent. And, you just don't have as much of a magical effect. And now, just like Dark Legacy, this game uses your standard 8-way or 49-way joystick. 49-way is that crazy optical joystick that would need to hook up to the extra little daughter board that would connect to the board. I have one of those somewhere from my Sports Station set. And of course it uses the 3 buttons, the fight, turbo or run, and magic buttons. Combinations thereof, of course, do your special attacks. Like if you do fight and turbo, depending on your turbo meter, which is right above your level there, it will determine what type of attack you do. If you only have the green portion filled, you do what's called a turbo attack, which I think it just makes it, it's like a bigger, like if I'm Green Archer, it's like a bigger arrow that she shoots. And then The next level up is kind of like your what I like to call your spread attack, because it's like a stronger attack, but it's it kind of spreads out. So like for instance with Green Archer here, or any archer for that matter, you do what's called double bow. So she'll have 2 bows and she'll just shoot all over the place like a spread shot. And then of course your once you have the red area all filled in, you do the full attack, which in the case of Green Archer here is BFG, or I think in the case of the Valkyrie it's Star Lance. I know in the case of, I think in the case of the Warrior it's like something Trail, and honestly, it's Demon Skull for the Sorcerer. I just remembered that right now. And now, I know I'd mentioned in my other video about the different system boards that the Vegas used. Now this will only work if you have a Vegas system board installed. If you have the Durango board installed, the game will not start at all. And now I'm just realizing I missed that food over there. And now, if you had watched my Gauntlet Dark Legacy video, upon watching a lot of this footage, you will notice that a lot of the layout is different. Like, one thing I'll mention, if you had looked back at the first stage, that is a big noticeable thing. There are actually 2 things that I can recall off the top of my head. And over there's the first rune stone. But the one thing was, there was that switch by the first bridge in the Valley of Fire. And there, of course, is my second promotion to level 25 veteran. I believe in the actual full playthrough I get up to level 50, which I forget what level 50 is called, but I'm sure you'll hear it when I do eventually post that part. But, yeah, in the first level by that bridge, there was a switch, and the switch would bring up extra speed, but that is not in this version. And then when you're going around that first curve after the bridge, there would be a false wall that would have an apple in it. That is not in this version either. And now another change from Legends to Legacy was the ability to block in Dark Legacy, whereas when you have a bomb thrown at you, the announcer guy won't like angrily say learn how to block, because it's not an ability in this one. Whereas in and of course the reason he says join in any time is if there's credits and nobody has used them, he says join in any time, figuring maybe a second player had put some coins in but hadn't pressed start. So you just have to use all your coins. So he won't continuously say that, because he'll say it often enough. It'll be like maybe every 5 minutes or so he'll say join in any time. And yeah, that was one of the big things in Legacy that I remember when I first heard him say learn how to block. I was like, wait, you can block? But yeah, you hold the turbo button. You don't press it, you hold the turbo button and that makes you block. If you press the turbo button in any direction, you'll do like the, you'll go a little bit faster. That's what the turbo button does on its own. And now let me get you a bit more of the, trivia on this, as I'm probably going to use this all up in this actual first part here. Now this version of Gauntlet actually has the Nude Valkyrie code, which Dark Legacy does not have. If you try this in Dark Legacy, it does not work. If you're on the blue side of, so if you're player 2, or if you configure the cabinet for 2 players, and of course, then player 1 would be blue, you enter your initials as NUD, and you enter your password as 069, you will get the Nude Valkyrie, which it's not going to be like a really, what do you call it? It's not going to be like a really graphic thing, because it's kind of, if you've ever played that game Whacked on Xbox, which has that nude character and she has the sensor bars, it's kind of the same thing. But I think it was a funny joke by the developers to actually put that in here. And now this area is another difference. Well, yeah, this is the part. This area is another difference. In Dark Legacy, if you had gone on that other area there, it actually was a longer branching path, where it's a bit shorter here in Legends. And now here is your level progression thing. At level 10, you gain access to your secret character. And then at level 25 here, you get the familiar. And as it says, it's a little pet at your shoulder. Level 50, you gain your best possible weapon. Level 75, you gain auto-aiming familiar. And at level 99, you get permanent growth. Your character cannot be knocked down by the golem's attack either, which is actually really cool. And that's one thing I always wondered in the screen here, why Death is kind of in the middle. I guess he's always watching you. It's kind of creepy when you think about it, but
You are now entering the Cliffs of Desolation.
Okay, now here's the next movie, I believe. No, actually, that was in the next area. And now you see the thermometer thing on the side of the screen. In this level, this was the runestone I had missed. So they give you the you're getting warmer, you're getting cooler thing, so you can actually kind of figure out where it was. Now, before going into this, I kind of knew where it was, because I had read an FAQ somewhere that told me where the runestone was, and so therefore I wasn't really going to be hunting and pecking. Unfortunately, later in the pyramid level, I have about a like 15 to 20 minute thing of me aimlessly wandering around because I can't find where the last runestone is, and I didn't want to finish that level until I did. Because the problem is if you finish the last level and you didn't have all the runestones, you would still go and try to fight Scorned. But what would happen is afterwards it would say go back and get the runestone, so you then have to just go through the realm that you missed the runestones in again. Now I'm gonna go over the console ports here real quick. Now the one thing that for some reason the MAME history.dat has is that there's a Game Boy Color port of Gauntlet Legends released in 2000. I've actually done some posts on the KLOV forums and actually looked at some information about this. And from what I understand, that's a typo, as most people I say tell me that the Game Boy Color port of Gauntlet Legends may have been something in the planning stages, but it never happened. The only port of Gauntlet to a portable, well, other than like earlier versions of Gauntlet, and then there was an attempted 3DS Gauntlet game that never came out, but the only port was Gauntlet Dark Legacy for Game Boy Advance, which I hear is a much different game due to the hardware limitations. But this came out on the big three of the time. In 1999, 1 year after the arcade version, you got your Nintendo 64 version, which from what I understand from a lot of people, is one of the more faithful versions of the game. And then, of course, in 2000, both the Sega Dreamcast and the Sony PlayStation versions came out. The Sony PlayStation version, of course, suffered the most because of its much inferior technology compared to the arcade hardware. You had to lose your 4-player mode, and the graphics suffered horribly. I think it was fairly recent I actually had, upon doing all this research with Gauntlet Legends and Dark Legacy, I was looking at some videos on what some of the stages look like on the various versions, and I'd seen the PlayStation version, and you ever have that, like, syndrome where you're like, well, I remember the graphics not looking as good as the arcade version, but I don't remember them looking that bad. That was one of those things when I saw it, and I was like, wow, the PlayStation version really does look pretty bad. I remember it being a serviceable version of the game, but, you know, not nearly as good as the arcade version. I remember the Sega Dreamcast version being a really good-looking version, and the Nintendo 64 version was not too bad either. Now, another rumor I want to dispel here that was more of a recent thing I'd heard is somebody on one of the message boards had said that there were Nintendo 64 memory card ports on the Gauntlet Legends machine, but I have also done research on that, and that's another thing that simply never happened. The only thing that machine that ever had Nintendo 64 memory card ports on it was NFL Blitz 99, because you could like set up your play data on the Nintendo 64 version, and then you would be able to take it into the arcade, which would really be convenient because, you know, in the arcade version you have limited time to play, whereas the console version you could like sit there all day and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna sit here and play my football game. I don't have to worry about my time ticking away. And now there's the original exit to the stage. There's another exit like down the road where you have to get your runestone. And I don't recall what happened the first time I had played this, because honestly, my first playthrough of this was a little while ago. Maybe a few weeks to a month before I actually did this playthrough. But one thing I definitely have to say about the Atari Vegas board, it's a very impressive piece of hardware, and considering this is running on like a 10 megabyte Voodoo 2 card, which in today's standards is like a really low-end graphics card, it looks amazing. It easily outdoes any of the consoles of the time, and I'd really even go as far as to say it looks better than some of the stuff that even came afterwards, because you had your Gauntlet Dark Legacy for PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube, and really they didn't look all that much better than this. Maybe they had, I think the Xbox version looked a little bit upscaled, but it didn't really have better graphics. You think they would have smoothed out some of the edges, especially of some of the lower poly models, but I guess they just wanted to do like a quick port. But yeah, this version of the game definitely looks really clean. I'd really highly recommend anybody check out. And there he was saying you were getting close to a runestone, just to give you a little bit of extra help, because the game kind of knows that you missed out on it the first time, and they really don't want you to be like, you just went through this whole realm and you missed the same thing you missed again. Because we all know, of course, if you're paying money to play this, which the first time I played this I was, it would really be annoying to go through this whole realm, only get the 2 runestones again, and, you know, then have to pay more money. And you'll see there I was kind of looking like, where is this runestone? I gotta find it this time. Can't let it pass me by once again. But let me see if I can get you a bit more trivia on Gauntlet Legends as a full here. Now, as I had said earlier, Gauntlet Legends was kind of like a remake / retelling, or even a sequel to 1985's Gauntlet, and of course 1986 Gauntlet 2.
Follow arrows.
And at the time, having passwords in an arcade game was very unusual. That enabled players to play over the course of a long period, like a role-playing game, instead of just like a limited play game that you would normally have with most of your arcade games. Because you got to realize, at the time, arcade games were structured as a you start the game right now, and you try to get as far as you can on as much money as you're going to pump into the machine. But the idea with Gauntlet Legends is the whole idea with giving the player the power to have a password. You now allow them to have that whole reason to come back. So it's not going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to go play this game, but I have to start all over again. It's kind of the whole, well, my character exists on this machine, so I have to go back to this specific location, and that not only helps the amusement companies and also the arcade operators, but it also helps the player, as now you have this this thing that you're doing, and whatever arcade or place that you're going to, you're now you now kind of have like that obligation to come back. And in 1998 or thereabouts, I wouldn't doubt an arcade operator would be more inclined to put this game in their lineup, because it would get those repeat players if somebody really liked Gauntlet Legends. And then, of course, this is the end of this stage. now having gotten that runestone. Even though I'd gotten the 3rd runestone already, I will be getting it again in here, so if you are new to the arcade version, you can see where it is. And as I'd mentioned, in the pyramid level, when I do eventually have the video of that, what I'm going to do in that, just like I did with Kadash, the playthrough of that, when I'm actually like aimlessly wandering around, I'm probably going to like put it like 10 times the speed, so instead of having me aimlessly wander around and me have to like ramble on about it, it'll pretty much be like 20 minutes and like maybe a minute and a half or so. So you'll just see like the character run around so quickly. But one thing I like about this is this game for some reason will not convert to what a PC monitor is going to display, since this does not run in true VGA mode. And also the video converter that I used is not like the medium resolution that this game outputs, so what you're actually viewing is it on standard resolution. But I can honestly say, in my opinion, that actually speaks to how great this game looks, that it can be in the low 15 kilohertz mode, and it still looks amazing. This game is just one of those games that I think it's kind of one of those games that you look at it and you're like, wow, this game really does look good, considering it's from back in 1998, which is just, at this point, a few years under 20 years old. Which my hopes is that when this game is 20 years old, they'll do something for the 20th anniversary, but honestly, I highly doubt anything's going to happen. And now the actual hardware on the Vegas board is it used a R5000 CPU running at 200 megahertz. Sound CPU is just a 16 megahertz CPU, and it had 2 DMA-driven 16 megahertz sound chips as well. That sound CPU was the ADSP2104, for those of you who are curious about the technicals. Now, there actually were a few more of those codes, but I'll probably go over those in a later video.
Limited levitation.
And now that's one of those cool power-ups that I like, is the limited levitation, because what ends up happening is that instead of if you're at any of these death traps, even though they look like they're right on the ground, like they're shooting up in the air, so like any of these like fire spitter things, or like in the later levels you have the spikes that pop up, if you have limited levitation, even though the stuff looks like it pokes or it burns you, it doesn't. And then that sound that you just heard was the limited levitation going off. Now, as opposed to the double bow, the fully charged turbo attack, like your BFG, your Skylanch, your I think it's Plasma Trail, and your Demon Skull, those actually shoot like some projectiles out of the side too, and then like the big concentrated attack in the middle. So it actually is a really good attack to destroy a lot of enemies, not just the ones in the middle, but if you have like a few on the peripheral sides, it actually will help a little bit. And that was one thing I was really glad that happened upon doing this video, that I got the level 25 familiar, because it's not the best help, it still just shoots absolutely straight, but it really helps. And now I remember when I had done that, I was like, oh my god, he didn't die from fire breath? But apparently there are some enemies that are strong enough. But as I was saying, the first familiar doesn't shoot like heat-seeking or anything, but it's still a cool extra hit instead of just your normal fire. And now one strategy I have that, if you didn't notice in the Cliffs level that I employed, is when you're facing off against a golem, one of the cool things you can do is, if you have these narrow corridors, as you see here, where like the passages between the rocks are actually pretty small.
Follow arrows.
If the golem comes around and he's coming after you, go between two of the rocks that might be too skinny for him to go through. Like, actually, Actually, you're gonna see me employ this right now. These two rocks are a bit too skinny for him to get between, so just stand beyond where he can get between, and he can't get you. He's gonna try to keep running at you like that, and he will never end up getting you. So it's actually a pretty cool strategy if you find yourself low on health. Now, the Gauntlet Treasure Room is kind of a homage to the old style of how Gauntlet was, because if you remember my old Gauntlet main review, this is what the old Gauntlet looked like. It was the top-down perspective with, like, the bricks and everything like this. So I thought this was kind of a cool nod to how the original games, and even the music in here kind of sounds like the original Gauntlet games.
3, 2, 1, 0.
And of course, all that really did was it got you some more gold that you could then use to buy power-ups as well. But it is kind of a cool thing that you can do there. Although the good thing about that is it, unlike, let's say, the special stage in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, it doesn't, like, take away some of your gold or something to get to there. Because that's the one thing I hated the most in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, is to get to the special stage, you need to give up all the rings that you had. I always thought it should have been that it would only take the 50 rings that it requires, so let's say I had 93, I'd still have 43 left. But it actually, unfortunately, took all your rings. So that was actually a bit annoying in that game. And the next runestone is not in this level, it's in the next level. And that's another thing I will warn that I'm sure that I said in the Dark Legacy video. Don't go by the runestone locations in the console strategy guide, which actually, I have it right here to my right here. I was attempting to use it when I first was playing this, as I wanted to make a video for Gauntlet Legends a lot earlier than I had. But none of the locations are right. The stages that the runestones are in are right, but just where they actually are is not right. And if you're wondering, the reason I always buy strength is, of all of her stats, the archer has low strength in the game, so I always try to get her to be a lot stronger. So in these close quarters combat scenarios, I don't have that problem where everyone just seems to be beating me up really bad. And now that was one of those things where I figured, I heard something like hitting in the background, so I might as well try my best to kill all those enemies, because when I get over to that other side, it'll make it a lot easier. And now I definitely have to say I don't mind these enemies in these later levels as much, but between you and me, I like the goblins or whatever you call them, those green guys, a little bit better. At some points, especially the ones that shoot, these enemies can get a little bit obnoxious, and that's another thing that's worth mentioning. In Dark Legacy, the scorpions show up like a level or two earlier than they show up in Legends. Because I think it was in the second level in Dark Legacy, and it was in the third level of Legends that you finally see the scorpions. And now this level, from what I can tell, was changed an awful lot in Dark Legacy. As I remember when you first entered the level in Dark Legacy, you had these things falling over, whereas here in Legends, it seems like I had a bit more level to explore. So it's probably a fairly similar level, but it's a different start point. So, yeah, that was a bit of a difference. It's one of those things that had actually surprised me. I had thought that the Legends levels were relatively unchanged in Legacy, but until actually playing these games a bit more, especially as their original arcade versions, I really didn't notice how much they had changed.
Green Archer needs food.
And I think it was in one of my gameplays that I done for Legacy, which I've not posted yet, which I may or may not, I'm not sure. But there was one time where I had legitimately died because the guy didn't say that I needed food. And the problem with that game is since The way that my screen is set up, sometimes I can have stuff on my desk that's going to block the very corner of the screen where my life would be. And another thing is the way that sometimes when I'm capturing this, the way that it wraps on the screen, it can cut off like that little bit, so I won't see the light, so I have to rely on the announcer guy. And there was one time I was facing the Chimera in Dark Legacy, and he didn't say that, and I legitimately died, but of course, you get 2 chances to actually insert your coins. First, there's the regular countdown on top of your name, and then there's this scroll that appears in the middle of the screen, kind of like the use keys to open doors and everything. It'll say insert 2 coins to continue, and that basically gives you a second chance to continue where you left off. Okay, and there you go. There's the shooting magic has a lower effect, as I had made brief mention of in the Valley of Fire. That I somehow had used my super attack and hit one of the magics. And he made no mention there, but I guess he figured, you know, it's about time. And yeah, the announcer guy really does come in very use. He's, and now, normally you would just exit here, but I'm gonna actually show you where the runestone would be. Even though, as you can see, I had already collected it in my previous playthrough, but you have to go just a little bit further over here. And now, that's one thing I did a bit in this playthrough. Now, you'd think since I have unlimited credits, because what I had done was I wired up the credit button to select on my Neo Geo controller, that I would just play all haphazardly, because there's no, like, real penalty for using too many credits, but I tried to play as, like, good as I really could, because, first of all, for me, it would just honestly get boring if I just kind of didn't play too well. And secondly, it would get kind of boring for you as a viewer not to see me play all that well. And now here's your last runestone for this.
Runestones have been found.
This level. Now all the other levels that I play after this, are the first time that I play the level, so it won't be like this where I'm kind of retreading the same thing. And the reason I'm not shooting anybody is I didn't want to use up all my super shots. I wanted to actually use them up on the dragon. And then, of course, this is the last time to buy power-ups before the boss.
Buy power-ups.
And just like usual, I'll buy a few, I'll buy as much strength as I can, because that really does help a lot.
You are now entering the Dragon's Lair.
Now, I know I had made mention of this in the Dark Legacy video, but I'll make mention of it again. But this is one of those fights that, when I first saw it, just like the dragon in Phantasy Star Online, I thought this was like one of the coolest boss battles I had fought. And I don't know if there's something about how it's done here in Legends as opposed to Dark Legacy, but it kind of feels more epic, and it just kind of seems to flow a bit better in Legends here. Maybe it's that he just shoots more fireballs at times, whereas in Dark Legacy he seems to go with the 2 all the time, whereas here he seems to mix it up a little bit. And as I'd probably mentioned in the Dark Legacy video, this game really does benefit a lot from having multiple players as opposed to just me playing here on my own. But it goes without saying that Gauntlet Legends is an excellent like RPG action game, I'd call it, because it's kind of like has RPG elements with your leveling up and your items and your keys and your magic and everything. And it has that whole arcade action feel that you have come to expect from a game like this. It's definitely one of the ones in the top, and if you're a collector of arcade hardware, I would highly recommend getting a Atari Vegas board just to play this game really the way that it was meant to be played. Now, it runs okay on some emulators, but I just think it runs a lot better on the original hardware. But then again, if you're anyone who's watched my videos for any amount of time, you'll know that that's just something that I really like a lot, is playing games the way they were really meant to be played. Even if it requires me to get like a ginormous metal thing that's going to sit in my room and take up a lot of room. But at least with this board, I have it on the metal slab, and therefore it's a lot more convenient to have it, so I can, like, if it's not being used, I can lean it up against the wall and it can be out of the way. Now, I remember playing this in the arcade. It was a lot easier to beat the dragon when you're playing it with a lot of other people, because the thing is the problem here is if you're playing alone, you're the only character he's going to go after when he shoots his fireballs, but if you have multiple players, he will shoot at, he will kind of shoot at the other players too, so you can shoot at him and not have to worry about him targeting specifically you. But one more thing I can make mention of in this boss battle is if you get too close, he'll do that thing where he breathes fire and moves his head from side to side, because that will get you, of course, a lot better. And there, of course, right there was that turbo attack, which it seems like it's a slightly larger version of your normal shot, and it goes a little bit quicker. And yes, I will say this right now, whenever I hear him make that noise, he always sounds like an elephant to me. Even though he's supposed to be a dragon, but that noise he makes him sound like an elephant. And I have no idea why they went with that sound. Maybe they thought it sounded like a mighty dragon sound, but you know, it's not like we have like big dragons in real life, so anyone's guess is how one of them would sound like. And whenever you do your big attack like that, it always makes him make the elephant sound. Now, I can remember when I was young and I'd play this, I'd always hide behind the stone barriers. And like within a shot or two, he would always take them out in like no time. So, like I've been playing here, it's always good to just move around a lot, so he's not going to get you. Well, this has been part 1 of my Gauntlet Legends Let's Play. I will probably, if they're not all out already, I will probably release these like every few days or one a week or whatever I decide to do. But if it's already like a lot after this and these are all out, then you can move on to the next video right after this if you want to see more of this excellent game. Well, this has been another Game Nexus video, and I will see you later. Bye.
Recovered his key. You have found all 3 runestones from this realm. Continue now on your quest to recover all 4 keys that unlock the Altar of Scorn. Buy power-ups.